Mhm. Hey, hey. Mhm. Hey, I love it. I was thinking as we were dancing, it feels like the same moves, but we're different people, Christine.
I was thinking since the last time we've been live on here, we've had a
Yeah.
few big things happen.
Hmm.
So I was like, do we talk about that now or do we do
Yes.
the we do the official intro and then we talk about it?
No, I want to wait no longer. Whatever you're more comfortable with. Yes, let's do the intro so it's included.
Right? Let's
Let's
do
do it.
it.
Okay. Hi, ladies. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon bestselling publisher, author, and natural product manufacturer. I am a champion for your natural self care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, Amazon best-selling publisher and author, and a dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself in community care.
Yes, together we are a podcast rooted in the eight dimensions of wellness and the founders of Women Connected in Wisdom community.
And we like to get together every week and have intentional conversations with our expert guests about how to be wise in business and relationships and wellness. How do we do
Whew,
this?
through all the roller coaster dips and it's like cranking up and you're like, come on. And then it goes down into the hill. You're like, no. How do we
Right?
stay, yes, centered through all of that?
Right?
Yeah.
So since the last time our listeners were with us last week, they got
Yes.
a lot last week. If they
Yeah, they
tuned
did.
in for the Amazon best-selling campaign for Women Connected in Wisdom Volume 2, y'all. Thanks for helping us make it to number
Yes.
1 again. This
Yes.
is our
Thank you.
second book that has hit bestseller status, and we are grateful.
Mhm.
And then today, you want to tell them what happened today?
Yes, today we are officially live for the audiobook that we have been talking about. So I know a lot of the listeners, the readers, you might not be able to get to reading the actual book, right? I talk about my friend, and as a mom, she's been busy taking care of my god kids, but now you can listen to it. So Amazon has been so kind to put a holiday discount on there, and you'll see that when you search for it. So help us become Amazon bestsellers again. We want it on every version of the book, right? So now you can listen in and tell us what your favorite chapter was to listen to.
Right. So
And maybe not
excited.
even a favorite if you can't pick. And that's really where we get, right? With so many different experts, all the different resources. Of course, you choose which one you need, but the thing is, it's hard to choose a favorite and you don't have to. So, however you feel about it, let us know in the reviews.
Yeah, we look forward to it. And we'll put in
Yes.
the show notes, we'll put a link to it
Yeah.
because it is available on like 50 platforms for audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, when we were doing our research,
We did.
the cheapest is on Amazon
I
for
know.
their launching it. So
And
that's
that's
pretty exciting.
It's important, and that's what we're talking about, right? Today we're talking about intellectual wellness. And that's one of my favorite things that we have the privilege to do here. We're used to having choices, right? I love
Mhm.
shopping and being intentional about my money and knowing the range, right? I'm not afraid if it costs $15,000, no problem. I don't want to worry about saying the price. I just want to know that the range is from 15,000 to 15 like cents. What is the range? Sometimes it is if you're buying wholesale, right? And then you know how to choose the best one that fits where you are. And that's what we have the opportunity to do with that. So super excited for all the new things that we have.
Can I just say congrats, my friend?
Mm,
Like you and I both, it's been a big year. Our listeners know it's been a big year. There's been a lot
yes.
going on.
Yes.
And just the last week's been a big week, right?
Mhm.
And
So
so,
big.
and I think it is always the way, especially with women, but we're always holding and looking at and acknowledging all the stuff, right? As
Yes.
it's going
Yes.
on, right? There's so much going on in the world. There's so much going on in our own families,
Hmm.
caregiving and
Hmm.
grief and loss
Yes.
and these celebrations, right? These
Yes.
celebrations where we get to connect with each other
Mm.
when we look at I don't know what we're at right now. I'll have to go over there and peek, but
Yeah.
we had so many reviews coming in
Mhm.
about how
32, I
eh,
think it's for volume 2 right now.
right, and
Mhm.
just that's one of my favorite things to do, right?
Mine
Is
too.
to read the reviews and see, because sometimes when you're in it, right?
Mhm.
You're like, okay, are we doing enough? Are we I don't know that everybody do this, but I always, are we doing enough? Is it this or is it that? Or, and we want to, almost every woman I know, like, wants to do their very best and
Yes.
put out something, and
Right.
you're always like, true, 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 true. And then when you put it out there, especially like a new book, it is like a baby, right?
Mhm.
You're like,
Mhm.
oh, please think my baby's beautiful, right?
Right. Yeah.
And this baby's beautiful because our
Beautiful.
friend and collaborator Marla Durden designed the
Yes.
cover for us, and it's beautiful. And and then everybody's talking about how intelligent this baby is too, right?
How to change your life.
What a
Yes.
prodigy she is.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's so fun. It is really fun,
Thank you so much.
and it's delightful. And I know you and I have special roles because
Mhm.
as the publishers and as the lead authors and coordinators,
Mhm.
not only do we get to write in it and share it, we get to uplift these women's voices and to be on. And what a lot of folks don't know is when they go through a process with us with a book, there's a lot of
Yes.
training involved. Like,
Yes, there is.
because a lot of our authors are first time authors. So we're supporting with bios and speaker one sheets and all the things, like,
And
to
recording
make,
the chapters.
right, to make this work.
Yeah.
And to hear how many, especially of our first time authors, because all of us that are writers and authors, we had those dreams of being published. We had those dreams of getting our stories out into the world. And I think a lot of people do. And it is a big deal. It's like, okay, yeah, this,
Yeah.
we goal check.
Oof. Thank
And
you,
not
Lord.
taking it, like, not
No,
taking it for
at
granted.
all.
So,
No, and to just sit in it. And that's why when you said congratulations, I didn't jump to say, "Oh, thank you and congratulations to you too." I sat in it because only you can give me the, "Hey,
mhm.
congratulations," and know exactly what that means, you know? So I appreciate it. And this is what I have. I'll take your congratulations and raise you in.
Oh, and
I
I love
love
you
you.
too.
And I love you, okay? So, yes to doing the things and yes to uplifting the stories. You know, we don't have to do it alone, and that's what we're talking about today, intellectual wellness, and that's what I love about it, right? Because absolutely, spend the time to congratulate yourself and congratulate the people that you love when they have stuff that happens, and we do that in the midst of grief, right? So how do we do all of that? For me, it's being intentional about my time, right? And even if the block of time has to move, at least I know this is going to get done over here. So maybe if I do need to give myself the night, I can give myself the night to refill myself. Let me make sure I'm okay. And tomorrow will take care of itself. You know, and then we could celebrate and do all the stuff or start the next project or wherever we're at in our process for that week.
Right, and checking in with all our 8 dimensions of wellness.
Hmm.
Every week we talk about an individual dimension of wellness, but and when we do our summaries, we talk about all 8. But it's been really top of my mind with this new book launch and everything like that. Like, really checking in with ourselves about where are we and and which
So
ones,
important.
and celebrating and affirming the ones that are working, and being gentle with ourselves and compassionate, but holding ourselves accountable for the ones that we may be out of balance in, right?
Yes.
And there's not even excuses, there's valid reasons a lot of times why things
Hmm.
get out. And
Hmm.
so today we're talking about intellectual wellness. You ready for the
Yes.
definition?
Absolutely. And but actually, before you give the definition too, I want to share as the listeners listen to the specifics of what we're going to go into with our guests, right? You said something really good about excuses and reasons. There's a thin line between an excuse and a reason, right? So when you're being introspective and you're noticing and not judging, like, hey, why am I doing this way? There's a reason, right? It's important to know your reason, know where the root is. We talk about the childhood stories and know why you are the way you are. And then once you know that, okay, now it's depending on where you are. It's not your response. It's not your fault that you were hurt, but it's your responsibility to heal, right? So now where are we? And what do we need to do next? How do we maintain that? So yes, please tell us the definition.
Right. So today, y'all, we're talking about intellectual wellness. Intellectual wellness includes having access to different sources of information and developing critical thinking and timely decision making skills. Also, continually learning through intentional intellectual growth, situations, and artistic creativity can help maintain one's intellectual capacity.
So good. When you hear that, what sticks out to you right now?
Right now,
Yeah.
I think about the process we've been through this year of publishing this book and the audio version and all the learning, the intentional intellectual growth situations and artistic creativity. Like it was all woven in. So we've been stretching that muscle, that intellectual wellness muscle, a lot this year.
Yeah, we
And
have.
enough that it's like, ooh, I may need a rest.
May need. It's mandatory. And that's in the chapter, Christine. If you do not rest at the end, you are not done with the cycle, you know. So
To celebrate, right?
and throughout it, you know, taking the water breaks, taking the deep breaths, and you will get it done. It will come to fruition if it's yours, right? Nobody can take what's yours, and you are allowed to rest and be productive and ask somebody else to do the other parts. Somebody else can do the parts that I might be weaker in and I'm not the expert, right? Or even eventually the parts I don't want to do. I love having people on the team and I can help them take care of their living expenses, my living expenses are taken care of and more, and we're, you know, that's where we're going.
I love that. What do you think
Yes.
about when you think about that definition?
When I think about it, I mean, I really think about what our guest speaks about, the abundance, right? And
Mhm.
when we were doing the book launch for volume 2, one of the things that surprised me that came up about what I wanted to share was that when you look at the details again, it does look impossible to go from where I was born, right, to where I plan to be and set my family up as a woman, where all the details that you could put out, right? But thankfully, we have the opportunity to work on our, again, intellectual wellness and see where we are, see what we need to work on, and then include people around us that'll help us get there. And I definitely believe we'll get there, just like we got there with Amazon bestseller. And sometimes it's just about asking for more, you know. And that's also what I thought about when you were like, we all thought about being authors, you know. And when I think about a press, it wasn't that I said, oh, I want to press one day. I was just, it was like in my mind, I periodically thought about presses and how it's crazy that there was riots and people breaking into stuff and breaking this huge machine that people did all this stuff to put books together. Like, why would you want to break it down? And I thought about the person whose stuff is getting messed up. And here we get to digitally and virtually connect to all these different experts and bring in their stories, bring in their resources. And I'm the person with the press. Who would have thought? You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at with it. Yeah.
Our little inner kids who are big book nerds, which both you
Huge.
and I have huge book nerds. Inner
Well,
kids are just like,
listen, and we're about to bring our, I'm talking about nerds, like it's sunlit outside and I'm in the closet reading a book with the flashlight, April art that with the batteries going out, April, like in the dark reading Harry Potter. Like what are you love um books. So I'm excited to be here and bring up our guests, have this conversation with you ladies about what we're doing now. You know, everybody's saying post COVID, what does that look like going into the holiday season and dealing with the different situations that we have in front of us right now.
all right. You want to
Okay.
read our guest bio? Let's bring her up.
Absolutely. So today, guys, we are talking to April Roberts, and April Roberts helps Gen X women achieve more abundance, love, spirituality, and alignment by connecting with their femininity. As a high achieving former attorney and financial advisor with degrees from Vanderbilt and Notre Dame, April understands the societal pressures facing women that often lead to burnout. She hosts the podcast Vixen Voice, where she shares stories of Gen X women that have shed the traditional definition of success to pursue their life's true passion. Help us welcome April Roberts. Welcome.
Hi, ladies. I'm jealous that I didn't
Hey,
get to dance in.
dance. Hey, you are always included, okay?
Always dance with us.
Hey, yes.
We take dance breaks. We believe in dancing when you're happy.
I
We
love
believe
it.
in dancing when you're stressed. We really
Yeah,
do dancing all the time.
It helps.
I
It
love it.
helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome, of course. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you about abundance and how people have more joy, peace, and love in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Oh my gosh, so much you were talking about in the intro. I was listening and I was like, this is just amazing because
Thank you.
I'm a certified high performance coach as well.
Mhm.
And it's science has proven that most high performers are not as happy as they could be because they don't take time to reflect and celebrate wins, right? They're just going for the next goal. So I love that you're both stopping and celebrating. I celebrate you both. That's kudos to what you've accomplished.
Thank
And,
you so
you know,
much.
you're welcome. And at the Vixen Gathering, that's what we really emphasize too, that we as, women are cheering each other on through this. And that each of my clients, I want them, every woman I meet, I want you to be your own biggest cheerleader because if you're not and you don't love yourself, you're not going to have joy, peace, and love. You're not going to have abundance. You may have a version of it, but you're not having the full amount. I believe in God. Some listeners may believe in the universe, the quantum field, whatever we believe in. That's this higher good that flows through us. You're not going to receive it all if you don't love yourself. So, I mean, it really starts with that.
Yes. And my thing is too that the difficult things are going to come. The heavy
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
we can't choose to avoid it. You can't move out the way, say, not me this time, like it
Yeah.
doesn't happen. And so, because I allow myself to sit with that, I'm going to allow myself the same space to sit with the congratulations and that you did it. You're Amazon bestseller number one.
Oh my gosh. I just got chills when you said that. I love it. I love that you're taking time to sit with that. It's so, so important. And the other thing I heard you talk about was taking the break and the rest. And if you think about it, the best in the world at everything take time to rest and restore. So why is it that we think we should not? It's really our duty to rest and restore so that we can show up and give value again. And, that's what I heard throughout your introduction, just how you're both so driven to give value and show up for your clients, your listeners, the women that you serve. And, I know we're talking about abundance today. And I think that's the key to abundance when you're on purpose, when you're delivering value. I was listening to a speaker earlier today talking about when you're successful, if you're not serving at the same time, you're only half happy, right? So, how are you going to show up and serve? And I think that's a big part of this key to joy, peace, and aligned abundance and love, right? It really starts with self love. And from there, we have our cup is more full to love others. And, I really believe in living our values, and my personal core values are alignment, affection, and adventure. And so, affection, like I love to give and receive affection. And I feel icky when I'm in a situation that I can't do that. I don't know about y'all, but I know it's not a good situation for me to be in if I don't feel loving and giving. Like something's wrong or something's missing.
It's like
Um,
those ways that you check in with yourself,
yeah,
right?
totally.
Interesting. I hear
So
what you're saying.
I love what you're saying. I do want to ask a clarifying question for our listeners.
Sure.
So, say we have somebody listening and they're like, okay, I hear this, right? I hear that I should love myself. How do I start?
Yeah. Well, you start, when y'all were talking about intellectual well-being, what came to my mind is neuroplasticity. When I learned about that, because I grew up, being told it was during the Just Say No campaign. And it's like, okay, if you drink alcohol, it kills your brain cells and they don't grow back. Like I grew up believing that, right?
We're
And
Gen
so
Xers. I'm with you, April. Shannon's way younger than us, but I'm with
I
you.
was like, what? Never come back? Whoa.
we
Oh,
were in that. And like
Gotcha.
literally a couple of years ago, I was watching something on neuroplasticity and I'm like, we grow new brain cells all the time. And a
Mhm,
lot of it has to do with connecting with people. Every
mhm.
time we learn something new, every time we make a new connection, that's why I love that adventure is one of my core values because I'm always doing new stuff. So just this off,
Hey,
go for it.
I have to pause you right there. What was their latest adventure? What's something that
Oh,
you did that you're like, what?
So I took 3 weeks to see if I could go work from Europe. I went to Vienna for 4 days, and then I
Mhm.
went to Spain. So in Vienna, I was with friends. I flew to Barcelona by myself. I mean, this isn't a huge adventure, but, post-COVID, like, adventure's kinda out the window. Like, it's so weird. I mean, I'll talk to about how I broke through that when we were all, like, locked in our homes,
Mm.
because there was no adventure, right? You had to create your own adventure. But I flew into Barcelona. I rented a car and I drove from by myself. I spent 2 days in Barcelona. I then drove down to Valencia, Alicante, Cartagena, and Estepona, which is down between Gibraltar and Malaga, and then up to Madrid. And I stopped in a town
Beautiful.
along the way. So, I just wanted to, I've lived in Europe before, I've lived in Italy, but I don't know, I just wanted to do something by myself. And I mean, it doesn't sound super adventurous, but pumping gas is different there, paying tolls is different there, figuring out how to park your car when you're going to this old ancient city that you can't drive in. Like
I
one day
think
I
solo travel is always
Yeah.
adventurous.
Yeah, it
Even
Right.
if
is.
it's domestic, even if
Yep.
it's in your own town pretending to be a tourist. I
Mhm.
think so many times, do you know Julia Cameron's The Artist Way work? She talks
No, but I'm gonna look it up.
she talks about artist dates. And really
I
one of
like it.
her principles is to take yourself by yourself on a
Yep.
date. And that
Yes.
solo travel, because often, especially as women, we don't allow ourselves that, right?
Mhm.
And it is I do a lot of solo travel, and I
Yeah.
love traveling with my friends and my family, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong about that, but there is something magical, and I do think it's intellectual wellness because you have to figure stuff out yourself,
Yeah.
and you have to and it is an adventure, so I love that
Yep.
you're saying that, April, like,
Yeah.
kudos, and you
Thank
were
you.
working while you were there?
Yes.
Yes. So the first week I took off, but then, yeah, I wanted to play with, can I really be a digital nomad and like work from anywhere except for when I physically have to be at things like our retreats we do once a quarter.
Right.
And so it was really interesting. And also, it was an exercise in discipline because in Europe, I'm waking up 7 hours before, my normal time zone, 6 hours before my earliest client. And so, I would get to go like play in the morning and like I had to come back and I tried to start work 2 hours before the US woke up so that then I could have calls. So, I don't know. It was interesting. I just wanted to play with it and see how it felt. And what was interesting was waking up so much earlier than the US. I felt so free, and that showed me why don't I feel that freedom, period? Because I'm doing what I want, I do what I love, right? There's some like deep down anxiety or something that I'm not dealing with. So that's why I like to experiment to test yourself to see, okay, everything appears great, but is it, right? Like, is there something
Yes.
I'm missing?
Trust but verify and
Yes.
check it, you know? And there's a couple of things I heard you say.
Mhm.
One of our chapters for volume 1 is yes, you do know.
Yeah.
So we invited you because you know a lot, all right? And you definitely know about this experience. And so I would not minimize it.
Yeah.
Like Christine said, we talk about, so in the chapter, again, I talk about intellectual wellness for volume 2, and I'm talking about unmitigated financial freedom.
Oh, I
Right, and
like it.
so thank you so much, and I look forward to it, right? And what we're talking about is time freedom and
Yes.
financial freedom. And again, a lot of women have not been able to take three weeks and figure
Mhm.
out which city works best. And I love your feedback about the time zones because I talk about having teams in different time zones, right? You
Yeah.
were 7 hours one way. I think Alexandria is 7 hours the other way, if I'm
Yep.
thinking about my time zones correctly, right? And one of our authors in our editing team is in Alexandria. And so from the United
Love it.
States, I'm thinking about it a certain way. But
Yeah.
when I think about moving to another state or moving to another country and why I would want to move there, maybe depending on where the majority of my teams are for my businesses, it would
Mhm.
benefit me to think about the time zone. Hadn't thought about it. So I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting. When I had my financial business, my director of operations moved to Egypt with her husband. He got relocated, and I would do a monthly webinar just for our clients because,
Mhm.
the financial industry highly regulated, and I wanted to talk about things that people don't talk about because I
Mhm.
wanted our clients to have all the facts to make the best decisions for themselves. And
Right,
so a couple of interesting things happened. One, it would take us like a full week to do this webinar in the past, but because we were basically working 24/7 with the time difference, like I would
right.
do my outline, she'd do the research for me. When I woke up, I had the research, and like we just got things done so much quicker,
Mhm.
everyone working on their own time. So that was the first thing. Two, we don't think about this. Like everyone wants to talk about China and censorships, but there are
Mm,
certain things of news that do not show up in the United States. So, her
mhm.
being outside of the United States, we actually got financial and like international financial information that I wasn't privy to that she would send me. So, I really like that because, intellectual well being is really, I like to say, knowing all your options. I just had this
Right,
conversation with a client going through a really tough financial time. Like her partner walked out of the business and is leaving her with a mess, right? And I was like, look, I know it's scary, but you have to know all your options. If you don't know all your options, how can you think through this?
right.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's what we love about Women Connected in Wisdom, right? And all the 8
Yeah.
dimensions, and we can have so many people in each dimension because there's different facets and parts of the industry that you can help somebody on, right? Different
Mhm.
personalities might work better together, different schedules might work better together,
Mhm.
and so that's why we can collaborate instead of compete because
Yeah.
everybody, the strengths and weaknesses will fall together how they should.
Well, and when you think of abundance, like collaboration is an abundant mentality, right? Competition is a scarcity mentality. Like you should only be competing against yesterday's version of yourself, right?
Right. Right. So when we talk about that, right, again, intellectually in the way that we weigh things,
Mhm.
it's not that yesterday I was worth less,
No.
right? So can you speak more to women and our worth and the self-worth that you walk your clients through in order to raise their money mindset, to start walking them through these 6 steps that you talk about?
Yeah, I love that. So we start with a pretty structured exercise. I really want them to, the saying awareness is 50% of the battle, right? And so many
Oh,
of
I
us
didn't know
are
that.
yeah, oh, you didn't?
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
I
I don't
hear
know
the
if I've
bell.
heard that.
And
Thank you.
so many of us are unaware of our limiting beliefs. And I don't even like the term belief. I like the term limiting thoughts and limiting feelings because as you talk about, the 8 areas of wellness, there's what we think and then there's what we feel and then there's the deeper thing I won't get into as much today. You talked about what you know, right?
Mhm,
That's your intuitive wisdom.
mhm,
And our bodies are so intelligent, and we don't, especially in the Western world, I don't think we give credence to the intelligence of our body and our intuition, right?
yes.
So we can start with our brain and what we think, but there's so many levels of who you are, and it's not all encapsulated in what you think. So, what I like to do is just kind of say, how much money do you think is the most money you could make in a year? And they write the number down. And then I say, okay, I want you to take that number and multiply it by 10. And I want you to take this new number and imagine that in 1 year, you're going to make that much money. So the first thing we're gonna do is first I ground them before this, by the way. That's super important. I heard you talking about grounding and everything. You want to be very present. If you need to light a candle, do breath work. If you're doing it outside, better barefoot in your backyard, even
Yeah,
better. Like
yeah.
be be as in touch as you can. And
Mhm.
then, when you think about 10xing the most money you think you could make, the first thing I do is check in on their thoughts, right? what are you thinking? Write down all the good thoughts and write down all the bad thoughts and just
Mm,
like sit with it for a moment. And you've basically just made a list. The good thoughts are things you want to reinforce, right? The bad
mhm,
thoughts are keys to what we need to overcome.
mm,
And then we're going to do the same exercise with, if you close your eyes and think about making that much money or imagine it, I want you to visualize, what is your body doing, right? Like, where in your body is something turning over? Do your shoulders rise? Does your stomach turn? Like, really, how are you reacting physically? Because it's going to
mm.
tell you if you're going to go into fight or flight when it comes to money.
Right.
And some of us go into fawn, which is just hiding, right?
Mm,
So it's even worse. So pay attention to how you react to money. And then the third thing is, what are your feelings, right?
mm,
Do you get excited? Are you scared? Like,
mm.
what feelings, again, the good and the bad bubbling up? And, if we're coaching, we're going to go into all that together and
Right.
see how quickly we can clear the blocks. But you obviously want to question the bad things that come up, because money is abundance. It's a flow of energy. Money itself is not good or bad, right?
Right.
It's kind of like electricity. It can either light the city or in the form of lightning, burn it down.
Mm,
So, how are you going to direct this money? And that's really the next step. Imagine if you made this much money, all the things you could do for yourself, your family, the world. This is where we get into service and purpose, right?
mm.
Because I know you were talking about the press, and you probably didn't want to be someone who owned a press. You wanted the press for what you could do for other people, right? And
Yeah.
for the world.
When you were talking about that, April, I was like, that's completely why we created it, right? To serve our clients better.
Yeah.
And it was from a point of service. And it was
Mhm.
like, okay, when you said that, something lit up for me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, it doesn't mean it's
No.
not possible, but sometimes when you're called to this purpose or you're called to, you're like, whoo, okay, here we go.
And I think that everything's gonna feel like that, it's like
Yeah.
the equal and opposite of the tug and the dread when you're somewhere and you're not supposed to be there. So,
Yes.
I still want to, on every day, pour out all of my potential and give all it, so I'm gonna be tired, but I would rather be tired doing this than the list of other things that were options, you know?
But yeah, because there's a good tired and a bad tired,
Right.
right? Like, I mean, this is crazy. My mom got some bad medical news the other night. And I
Mm,
mean, thank goodness we went to the doctor today and it's not as bad as we
yes.
thought. But I walked in the room. I was like, Mom's on the phone with the doctor. Why didn't y'all tell me?
Mhm.
And my mom was just bawling when I walked in. And I just sat on the floor and gave her space till she was ready to talk, rubbed her back, told her I was here. And, she talked to me, but I actually did not feel bad in that moment because I was grateful I was there to hold space for my mother, right? And that's a bad situation. So it's all how you show up and how you view something, right? And
Absolutely.
when you're on fire, I like to call it, which means you're on purpose.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're gonna have the bumps in the road, but you just kind of ignore them, right? Like, I like to say it's like we're a stream flowing, and when you're not on purpose, you feel the sticks, you feel the hard rocks, like
Mm,
you're the water bumping into all this. But when you're on purpose, you just flow. Like,
mhm.
everything's still there, but you're still going. And so, like you said, it doesn't mean it's not hard work, but I don't know about y'all, but I was training for the Grand Canyon, to hike rim to rim, and when we got done with our 4 hours of training and I went and took a shower and a nap, that is
Mhm.
the highest quality shower and nap I've ever had in my life, right? Like
Right.
like,
Rim to
I
rim.
earned that.
Yes, you did.
So, whereas,
Mm,
if you're under stress, you can take a shower and a nap and it feels bad. So,
mm.
the same thing can flip both ways. It just depends, I think, on where you're coming from, the purpose, and the value you give to the activity. That's why affection's so important to me. Like, let's say you cook dinner for your family, to keep it simple. If you're doing it from a place of love to nourish your family, take care of them, give them something delicious, it's not a chore. But if you're like, oh, every day I have to cook dinner for my family, it's the same activity viewed through two different lenses.
Yes. And I think that is so, yes to all of that. And I agree with you, right? And then sometimes because we want it to feel like you're pouring love into the food, into all of the water molecules so they'll benefit their
Yeah.
bodies that way, right? And sometimes when you're balancing business and all this stuff, you get there and well, usually it feels like this. And I'm trying to make it feel like that, but it doesn't feel that way. And so
Yeah.
now we can notice and judge and say, well, why? And I think this is where when we talk about relationships and all the hats that we wear, sometimes it can be a difficult conversation because
Yeah.
now we're just looking at the time, right? Let's take the personal out of it. And if we're talking about time and financial freedom, if
Mhm.
I'm cooking 3 meals a day from scratch, that's a lot of time, right? And
Yeah.
if we're Amazon bestseller, maybe
Yes.
publication week is not the time to do three
Yes.
meals of scratch. Let's just do the crock pot. Let's do some stuff that's cooked already, so that we know on
Yeah.
those days we're ready. But because we haven't always had the opportunity to have those conversations, now you might feel guilty, right? There's mom guilt that we
Mhm.
talk about, or
Yeah.
somebody just the relationship between, and I talk about it in the chapter, communicating to the people who your schedule is going to affect. Because
Mhm.
it's not going to look the same every week. We might be traveling, one week we're in Mississippi, the other week we're in Texas,
Yeah.
and logistics have to shift, and that's fair. And you're not putting anybody off. But with this 168 hours for this week, just like this budget for this money,
Mhm.
this is how it needs to flow, and then we can kind of, ebb and flow and be the water going through the different situations.
Yeah, I love that, and it's important to look ahead, and look at that because I mean, really, when you think
Thank
about
you.
it, one way I heard it explained makes a ton of sense. You have like social contracts with the people in your life, right? Which are their expectations. But if
Mm,
you think of it as a social contract, you can renegotiate the contract,
I
right?
like that.
Or like another way to think about it is there are seasons of life. And in this season, I'm going to be on fire and be a domestic goddess. And in this season, I'm going to be an Amazon bestseller. And
Right.
and women are multifaceted. And that's what's so beautiful about them, all these different layers and capabilities.
Yes, and it's beautiful to ebb and flow too because I think about
Mhm.
this book, how full is it under here? No, how full is your bucket, right?
Yeah.
And so you know that if you're gonna be away, it's just like an NFL player or a person who's an artist that has shows and now you're on tour. When you're at home, try to fill in and do the different things and
Mhm.
the things that you don't have the opportunity to do when you're getting off at 3, 5, 6 a.m. in the
Yeah.
morning. And that can fill you up. It can fill
Yep.
your people up that you have those social contracts with, and then they can be happy for you and really celebrating. And now it's not the resent or whatever else can come from those situations because it wasn't
Yeah.
communicated. And now expectations are general and in the gray area.
Well, and talking about all of this leads to like step 6 in the process I do with my
Mm,
clients. And, I do webinars on this, by the way. I have a full podcast walking you through this exercise because I basically
yes.
do free coaching in my solo episodes. So check it out on the Vixen Voice. But,
Yes.
the last step is setting your hourly rate. And this is for many reasons because
Mm,
and if we go back to putting purpose and value to the money, one thing I notice a lot is that my female entrepreneur clients have a really hard time setting revenue goals. Like, I just have to like really come on, we need a revenue goal. This is your North Star. How can we reverse engineer like planning, right? And I
right.
think it's just, I think people in general, but especially women, tend to harbor a lot of shame and guilt about money. And that's why this exercise is so important. And it comes from different places for everyone. So there's no one size fits all for anyone.
Right.
It really depends on, what you were raised being told, where you went to college, who you hung out with. I mean, you may be carrying some karma from a past life where you were greedy. And so, like, you feel badly about it. Like, I mean, there's so many levels to why we feel a certain way, but you have to, that's why I say awareness is 50% of the battle. When you're aware of these thoughts you have about money, then you can
Yes.
start to deal with it, or
Right.
feelings or your body's reaction. But
Mhm.
knowing your hourly rate is critical. So if you're salaried, it's simple. You divide it by 2,000 hours or 2080, however much you decide to work. If you're an entrepreneur and you're bringing in X amount of revenue, you divide it by, the time working, and which is, I like to, if you're an entrepreneur, I like to do two numbers. One is your revenue number because you're probably the rainmaker for your company. So what's your value to the company, your hourly hourly rate? And two,
So,
what's your personal income and that rate?
can we go back?
Yeah.
And I love everything that you just said, right? So we went from team member, asset on the team, and you are salaried somewhere
Yep.
else to entrepreneur and the first number that you want to start with so that you're doing your calculation correct, right?
Correct.
Can we talk about how to set your hourly rate in both a little bit so for
Yeah, let's
our
do that.
listeners to want to work through it?
So if you are salaried, let's take your annual salary, let's say it's 80,000. I like to keep it simple and divide it by 2,000 hours, which you can do the math.
Okay.
I think that's like 50 weeks working 40 hours a week, something
Mhm.
like that.
I got you. I'll do it.
Um and so if you plan to take more vacation time, it might be less, but just keep it simple.
That's
So
exactly what it is.
yeah, you can take 80,000 divided by the 2,000 hours means, and you can check me on the math. I'm usually good at this in my head. You're earning, what is that, 40 an hour, I would imagine. Yes, 40 an hour, right?
Yes.
So let's say you're bringing 40 an hour into the household. We're talking about domestic things. And, in 3 hours, that's 120 bucks. And you can hire someone to clean your house for 80 bucks in 3 hours. That's a no
Mhm.
brainer. You're
Mhm.
leveraging your money, right?
Right.
And it's not just that you have to work during that time, you're also worth $40 of rest, $40 of spending time with your family, $40 of self care
Mhm.
because and again I hate to say like someone making less money is worth less, but you get my point. Like it gives you a logical way, we're talking about intellectual intelligence, to make
Yes.
decisions
Mhm.
about when you ask for help, be it in the home, be it at work, and also how you allocate your time. I mean, Shannon, you and I were talking about calendar management, which I'm a calendar
Yes.
nerd as well.
Yes.
And, one, your calendar should reflect your core values, your goals. And number three, you need to make sure your worth is showing up on your calendar. So, this is a mathematical way to kind of say, hey, at this current rate, what I've noticed is most women, about I'd say 50 to 60% of the women that do this exercise are
Mhm.
horrified by their hourly rate, which
Mhm.
means they're not getting paid what they're worth, right?
Right.
Either by someone else or what they're earning. So then that's a whole nother track we need to go into. How do we help you ask for that hourly rate? How do we help you, get that? And this is my favorite story. One of my niece's friends reached out to me. She attended my launch party and then booked like, a 50-minute complimentary call with me, and I wanted to do it.
Yes.
And she's just out of college, and she was doing social media for someone. And when she told me what she got paid, I looked up the average new and I'm like, you're getting underpaid by this much. And so I coached her through having this conversation, and she
Mhm.
got a raise above what we even discussed. Right.
Beautiful.
And so, I mean, this is right out of school. How important is that lesson for her? Right.
Very important for
Yeah.
so many ways, right? Like negotiating
Mhm.
your wage and what you want, being
Yeah.
able to have that conversation with the people that
Yes.
you work with, and of course, the space that it's going to give her in her life while she's still in that position, and
Yeah.
the trajectory of everything after that.
Yeah, and my co-facilitator, the Vixen Mastermind, did this with one of her mentees who's in his 30s, and he was making 80,000 and ended up the next job he got, he jumped up to 150. I mean,
Wow.
people, we see this a lot. People are underpaid.
Mhm.
And so really understand what it's costing you per hour, when you're not doing that thing, right? And same thing, I mean, I remember when my brother first got married and they looked at the numbers, it was more expensive for the household for my sister-in-law to go to work when they had a baby because of daycare and all the other costs, right? And so they had a social contract that for 2 years she would not, and then she'd go back to work, and she was okay with that, right? I'm not saying if you're not okay with that, you should do it, but it just
Right.
intellectually helps you make decisions that, of course, you have to emotionally, purpose wise, core value wise be okay with.
Yeah, and it helps have those conversations, right? So when I'm
Mhm.
washing the dishes again,
Yes.
And I'm not resentful because we said I was gonna be washing the dishes for these 2 years, and
Yeah.
now it can be on the other side, and I'm enjoying my time while my kids are young, that
Yeah.
makes sense. It's
Yeah, I
beautiful.
actually have a friend who went through this exercise with me. She attended my, workshop, and her husband got promoted, and she's
Mhm.
an entrepreneur, and part of his job, she's kind of expected to entertain the wives of, people working with them, and
Mhm.
so she said, "Okay, if you want me to travel with you this much, this is what it costs my business." So they negotiated an hourly rate for her to go on business trips with him.
Yes, and it's a tax write-off. And
Yes.
it's a tax write-off. And we talked about on one episode asking for maybe something that goes towards the retirement, right? If
Yeah,
I'm
I
out
like
and I'm
that.
not in the workforce, it's important. I'm studying, talking about intellectual wellness. I just passed my test to be a life and health insurance agent,
Ooh,
right? So thank you.
yep.
So talking about the money that's coming in and getting ready for retirement, me being out of work is minimizing my possibility for Social Security, minimizing
Mhm.
these things that these
Yeah,
other places require. So
yeah.
to supplement that as well, let's put something in the retirement account so my compound interest can be adding while I'm washing the dishes.
I love that because, I was a financial advisor, and actually David Bach wrote a book about smart women finish rich, and so I
Mm.
helped him do his national, seminar based on this when the 20th anniversary of his book came out,
Mm.
and the statistics on, 1, what women earn less than men, and 2, what they save less because of interruptions in their career to take care of family, both
Right.
children and parents,
Yes.
and women tend to save less for retirement, and the average statistic is that a woman outlives her husband by 7 years if you're
Wow.
married when he
Mhm.
passes. I know my grandmother lived 14 years past my grandfather, right?
Mm.
So, there are all these reasons that women should be saving more than men, and we're not. So I love that idea of, negotiating for the retirement or the savings
Mhm.
or the future.
Yes. Thank you for that. That's beautiful.
Mhm.
And before we go into
Before
yes,
we switch cameras,
Christine.
I just want to say yes, yes, yes. And because so much of the labor that women do
Mhm.
is unrecognized,
Yes.
unspoken, and unseen.
Yeah.
And so that negotiating for that makes it visible and it
Yeah.
makes it valued. So thank you for doing that with your clients and teaching them how. Because I do also want to say, because I do some of this work with my clients, it
Mhm.
is a skill and it's a muscle, and
Yes.
if you're not taught it, like, don't feel bad that you don't know how to do it. If
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So getting support or help is completely, it's not only acceptable, it's what you need to do. So,
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I totally agree with that.
And before we go
Mhm.
into the wisdom and action for the week and what we're doing for ourselves for our wellness, I wanted to go back to the entrepreneurial side. So
Yes.
we talked about the breaking down the salary, right? I got the $40 an hour over here. What about for the revenue and where you were going?
So I like to, if you're an entrepreneur, you're bringing in money for your company. Like Shannon, you talked in the intro about, providing a lifestyle for your team,
Yes.
which it amazes me that so many women are fearful of hiring, because one of the
Mm,
most fulfilling things I do is lead my team and
mm,
provide a lifestyle for them, not just in money, but we have very flexible work situations, right?
right.
Which they're grateful for. And they're like, I love that I can do this in the middle of the day. And then I can just choose to work later or choose to work here to get stuff done, right? So
Yeah.
there are benefits outside of money as well that you can provide for your team: growth,
Yes.
opportunity, entrepreneurial spirit, lots of things. But I mean, the bottom line is, if you own the company, you're responsible for bringing revenue in for all of these things, right?
Right.
Which is your top line number. So
Yes.
again, we'll keep the math easy, and let's say you bring in $1 million of revenue
Okay.
divided by the 2,000 hours, is $500 an hour you're bringing in for your company. And so, I learned this lesson early. I was a litigator at a very large law firm. and I absolutely loved my legal secretary. She was amazing. I'm sure she got paid more than me because she'd been there for 50 years and like worked
Wow.
for the head of the department. But
Mm.
she caught me making copies one day because I'm a 25-year-old, very nice, kind girl.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to ask her to do this. I'm just going to go make my copies. And she like scolded me for making my own copies because she said, the client pays you $200 an hour. They pay me zero. Who should be making the copies? Right.
Simple. Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, "Okay," because she was just very no nonsense and, like,
Right.
amazing person. I loved her, like, I was so blessed that she was in my life at that age. Um, but, that's kind of always been in my head, and I don't
Mhm.
think that many people in general, and especially women, have this kind of idea in their head, right? So, if I'm bringing in $500 an hour by doing these activities, why am I going right and doing this activity that's someone else's job, right? Because I feel badly about asking them or about delegating. So
Yes.
it doesn't make financial sense for the well being of the company, which is the well being of the team, yourself, your family, right?
Yes.
So I think you have to understand it from that level. And then, second, you have to understand your personal income also for planning, right? Because,
Right.
okay, my company makes this much money, but how much personal money do you need? And that goes into part of the planning and the drive. So let's say you keep, again, for easy math, 200,000 of that, right? Divided by 2,000 hours is $100 an hour. So if you think you're bringing that into the household, again, you take the same exercise when determining how to spend your time and which activities you should be doing and not doing. And then you start realizing, oh gosh, when I feel badly and I give someone a discount for my services, I'm hurting my company and my household, right? And,
Right.
if I give someone a 50% discount, I'm hurting my company $250 an hour and my household $50 an hour. So I just think it helps get around a lot of the shame and the guilt and embarrassment that often we feel talking about money. I mean, there's
Mhm.
so many emotions tied to it.
Yes.
And so it kind of gives you logic to back up decisions. And
Mhm.
and again, you have to feel good about this. Let's say that there's a charity or someone you can serve for half the price. There could be other reasons for you to do that than money, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. Christine, you have anything that you wanna ask or share before we go to
No, I
go
was
to the
just
next
thinking about the wisdom of this. And I love, April, that you have steps. And we
one?
were talking about earlier before the show, we were
Yeah.
talking about upcoming events you have. And as
Yeah.
we were doing the introduction, we were talking about rest and retreat. And you have a retreat coming up that I want you to share with our listeners, and tell them what it is and what you do, because this is retreat season. It is time
Yes.
to take that deep breath right before you go into the holidays, right? Because we're here.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we do have a couple of more spots. Our retreat is the end of this month. And what it is the Vixa Mastermind is a 90-day commitment, I like to call it, where you get one-to-one coaching, group coaching. We have morning coffee every Wednesday to hold each other accountable, cheer each other on, reflect on wins, and have these deep conversations like we're having here. And this is one of the exercises you get to go through during that 90 days. There's kind of the 5 pillars I coach on. And a lot of them are making sure you're solid as a woman so that you can show up for your family and your business, right? Even though it's business coaching. So just like this, a lot of them make sense in both areas. And so we do have a couple of spots available, and our retreat is end of November. So every quarter we have a retreat. So any 90 days you sign up, you get a retreat included. This one's very cool because we always plan for the quarter along with doing exercises like this. But since it's end of the year, we are going to be reverse engineering all the numbers for the next year. So we're going to be planning out 2024. We're going to start with numbers like this. If you're not happy with your hourly rate, how do we double it? And how do we make that happen in your business? And then you'll think through the actions and the team members you may need to make that happen. So that's pretty exciting. And this one's fun because it's near my hometown in Mississippi. It's part of the world that many people don't go to, close to New
Mm,
Orleans. So lots of fun. We'll be close to a beach. We'll have walks on the beach. We'll have yoga. We will do this together. We love to enjoy dinner together and throw in some other activities. So thank
I love
you,
it.
ladies, for asking.
Of course.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
the stuff we love.
Yeah, and I love traveling, and I love that you did it where you're
Yeah.
doing it, especially how close it is to the beach, all the reasons, right?
Yeah.
But I love not going to the same place over and over again. Love New Orleans. After I went the 3rd time, I'm like, "Okay, I don't wanna repeat this sentence for a while. I need to put other states and places in between it."
Yeah.
So, cheers to a new place.
Yeah, and in, September, we were in Stevenson, Washington, which is one of the
Mm,
absolutely most beautiful places I've ever been to in my life, and I
love
probably never would have gone there, so it's really
mm,
we try to find somewhere unique, tied to nature, because I think that's a big part of this, and just make sure we enjoy life, and like I said, cheer each other on and hold each other accountable.
I love it. And so I know you have this at the end of the month. This week, what are you doing for
Yes.
yourself, for your wisdom and action and intellectual wellness?
For myself, great
Yes.
question. So actually, when I hop off here with you, I'm part of
Mhm.
Brendan Bouchard's Ultra group,
Mm,
which the first of the month, I just heard Ed Milet speak before
okay.
hopping on here.
Mhm,
And then Brendan had a 2-hour speech. So when I get off, there's some more speakers, and it's just kind of my monthly fire up, like just
mhm.
reminding me of, this morning was 2 hours on self esteem. And to be honest, I think I have pretty healthy self esteem, but I definitely had some major takeaways, not just for
Beautiful.
my clients, but for myself,
Mhm.
and how we can keep our self esteem intact. And I think it's really timely going into the holidays because I think we all know that
Yes.
we run into challenging situations, as beautiful as the holidays are.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
So, would you say building esteem up or would you say monthly fire up?
For me,
Yes.
monthly fire up, and
Okay.
what I do on a daily basis every morning is, my prayer and meditation, and really just that quiet time to be prepared for the day.
Yes.
I like to plan, but wake up and meet each day as it is, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. So
That's
that
exactly what I do. It makes sense.
Absolutely.
I
We've
love
talked
it, and
about
so
it.
that time in the morning just kinda clears everything so that I'm just ready for what comes.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Uh,
I
Mhm.
love it. And that's what I'll say for mine. Meet each day with ease.
Oh,
You
I
know,
like it.
Thank
Yes.
you. And that's how I think about it, right? Because a lot of times when we give, it's just like the difference between the word budget and nourishing plan. You
Yeah,
might feel like, why are we organizing all this stuff? I don't like to do it that way. But for me, organizing it does allow the freedom. Now
yeah.
I know first call is 10:30. I'm not even touching
Mhm.
my phone yet. My alarm went off. I have more than enough time to not have to worry about it. And
Yeah.
it's gonna take care of itself. It'll be okay.
I set alarms too. I'm here at my
Yeah.
parents', and I forgot Monday I had a 4 o'clock late meeting, and my alarm
Mhm.
went off at 10 till, and my mom goes, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, I have a meeting. See you guys in an hour."
Yes, would have forgot about it, right? Talking and
Yeah.
stuff like, no. Whew. What about you, Christine? What's your wisdom in action?
well, I think I'm going to go back to what I first started talking about when we got on. I think I'm going to rest and celebrate. I think
Oh,
I love
doing a
it.
lot of intellectual wellness, and
Hello.
I'm about to travel.
Yes.
I have a big event this weekend in Oakland, and
Mhm.
then
nice.
I'm gonna go off the grid for a couple of days, which I'll probably talk about that next week. But this week is
Mhm.
rest and celebrate
So
for
much to celebrate.
yeah, it'll be
Yes.
it'll be
Well,
good.
April, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us.
Well,
Thank you
thank you,
so
ladies, and congratulations again. So excited
Thank
for all
you.
of your success, and I know it comes because you guys bring value to everything you do.
Mm.
much.
Thank you
But
so
before
much.
you take off, tell folks where they can find you if they want
Awesome.
to connect with you.
So on social media, you can find us at Vixen Gathering. And also, I believe we shared with y'all. There's actually a link if you'd like to chat about the mastermind or the retreat. Hop on my calendar for 50 minutes. We'll go through your goals and obstacles you're facing and see if it's aligned for you.
Love it. Thank you so much for offering that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Yes.
we look
Okay.
forward to being connected more. Thank
Yes.
you, April.
Talk to you soon.
Oh, so fun. So
Hmm. I
But
love
it's
it.
gonna work in the world. It so reminds me
Right?
of our manifesting Mondays and the things we do, so aligned, and I'm
Like,
just
literally.
right?
What we thought about when we were at that table, like, more people need to have these conversations. Who are the other people that are strong in different areas? And look at us.
Right? And just
Yeah.
giving like so many resources she dropped. We're going to put them in the show notes, y'all.
Mhm.
And we're going to put all the ways to stay connected with April and just reach out. And I mean, a 15-minute consultation is cool. Like, have
And it's
that time,
worth it. Yeah, to
right?
get the goals, to get the
Yeah,
clarity.
I
Yeah.
love that. All
Mhm.
right, my friend. Well, I know we're at time, but are there any other shout outs we need to give? Are there any things that we want to say before next week as we close up episode 136?
136. Just thank you again. Thank you again to all the listeners, everybody who's been here and helping us with the resources, helping us know what you want to read, what you want to listen to. And I know that we talked about it at the beginning, but again, make sure that if you want to listen to it or know someone who would benefit from listening to the audiobook, let them know because we want them to get the best price. And it's the best price right now on Amazon.
You and I were talking about this when we were working
What's
earlier,
this?
but we
Is
haven't mentioned it on
your
air.
sticker?
Sticker.
And there's also early voting, okay?
It is
And
early voting, folks.
and
And
when
before we get on next week, it will be
mhm.
voting day.
It's
So,
well, isn't it the 7th? Yeah, you're right, next Tuesday. You're
so
right.
get your
And
plan, go vote. It's mostly
mhm.
local elections, but they're important.
And they're very important. And when we talk about intellectual wellness and
Mhm.
thinking about insurance, I was thinking about, I think it's called Christmas treeing. When extra things are added, I thought it was going to be Board of Education. We're talking about $85 million. So go make sure you study what's going on and figure out which side you're on and, have your voice be heard so it can count and we can know what's going on in our communities.
And I always give this shout out, but the less that is on the ballot is
Yeah.
often more important of an election,
Yeah.
especially for local. Like I went today during our break and voted for mayor and two city council seats. There were
See,
only three. It took me literally less than 10 minutes.
beautiful.
So,
It was quick.
yeah, early voting's right now. Most places
Yes.
have it through Friday,
Hmm.
and then voting day is next
On
Tuesday.
the
So
7th.
we will put a link in our show notes to how to find out near you what elections are happening, and be engaged and be involved. So because your
Yes.
voice matters.
Mhm.
So,
Definitely does.
all right, my
Okay. Yes. Thank you guys so much again for listening. We'll be back next live next week at 5. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. We'll see you soon. Peace.
see you